We continue now at the top of Daf Yomi Gemara Meseches Zevachim. This is Zevachim Daf 19b. On the previous Amud, the Gemara made a distinction between Tefillin Shel Rosh and Tefillin Shel Yad. When it comes to Tefillin Shel Yad, it's problematic for a Kohen to wear that during the Avoda because it's a chatzitza, it's a separation between the Kohen's garments and his body. When it comes to the Tefillin Shel Rosh, that is not a problem of chatzitza. The Gemara asked, why is the Tefillin Shel Rosh not a problem of chatzitza? There was a mitznefes, there was a hat that the Kohen wore. And the Gemara says that really wasn't a chatzitza because we have a brisa that says that even by the Kohen Gadol who wore the tzitz, there was hair visible between the tzitz and his mitznefes shesham meniach tefillin. It was over there that the tefillin were placed. And Rashi explains shesham meniach tefillin. That's where the tefillin were placed. Hilkach leka chatzitza. Therefore, there is no chatzitza by the tefillin shel rosh. Again, it's only an issue by the tefillin shel yad. And Rashi notes, Vitona de itzrich lashminanim hi nichon ein chotzitzos. Now, when the Tana says that if you place it on, it says ein chotzitzos, so what's the point of even teaching that if it's not a separation anyway? Physically, it's not a separation. Again, as Rashi said in the previous Amen, Mishum yisur begadim hu de itzrich. That's necessary to teach that it's not yisur begadim. The point over there is that it's not considered an extra garment, which could have been problematic when it comes to the big day kahuna lashminan de lav beged, who it's teaching us that it is not a beged. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Mechusar Kippurim, that's somebody who's lacking atonement. It means that the person is tameh, and he's on the way towards purification. He started the purification process, but still needs to bring the kapara, still needs to bring the carbon, that final atonement. So such a person is still considered to be tameh, and if he does the avod in the Beis HaMikdash, it's going to be profane, it will be disqualified. The Gemara says, Minolan, from where do we know this? Amar Rav Huna says, Amar Krutz, because the pasuk says, V'chiper oleh ha-kohen v'tohera. It says the kohen is going to bring for her the kapar, and then she will be pure. Tahira mechlal she tameh. That implies she's going to be pure. It implies that she is tameh until now, and so you see in general that a mechusar kippurim is considered tameh. Rashi explains mechlal she tameh ad achshav. It implies that she's tameh until now. V'tameh ksiv bei v'yinazru v'lo yichalu. It already says v'yinazru by someone who's tameh. It says v'lo yichalu. They shouldn't profane the avoda, and therefore we understand that that extends to a mechusar kippurim as well. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, "V'shalo rochutz yadayim v'raglayim." Someone who doesn't wash his hands and feet and does the avoda. Also, there the avoda is mechulal; it's profaned. And the Gemara says to that, "Asya chuka chuka mi mechusar begadim." This is learned from Gzeir Shava. Chuka chuka from mechusar begadim. This Gzeir Shava was mentioned earlier. Rashi explains, "Asya chuka chuka malahalan." Just like over there, imavad chilal. If he does the avoda, it's profaned. Afkan, so too over here, imavad chilal. If he does the avoda, it is profaned. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Kohen Gadol shelo taval v'shelo kidesh bein beged lebeged uvein avoda liavoda. If a Kohen Gadol, he doesn't immerse and he doesn't sanctify himself between garments and between avodos. This is talking about on Yom Kippur. V'yavad, and he does the avoda, avodaso kasher. His avoda is still kosher, even though he didn't do those steps in the process. Still, the avoda is kosher. V'yachad Kohen Gadol, v'yachad Kohen Hedyot. And whether we're talking about a Kohen Gadol or a Kohen Hedyot, shelo kidesh yodav v'raglav. If he doesn't sanctify his hands and his feet, he doesn't wash them, shacharis in the morning, v'yavad, and he does the avoda, avodas psula, so then his avoda is disqualified. Rashi explains, Kohen Gadol kagon b'chamesh avoda shel Yom HaKippurim. Again, we're talking about the avodas of Yom Kippur. The alfinon b'seder yuma, we learn out of Meseches yuma shehu mishana mi bigdei zav le bigdei lavon, u mi bigdei lavon le bigdei zav, that he would change from the golden garments to the white garments, from the white garments to the golden garments. V'tzarach l'chol chilaf tefilo shnei kiddushin min hamikra. The pasuk says every time he changes garments, he needs to immerse, and he has to have shnei kiddushin, 2 sanctifications. Im lo tava v'lo kiddush. But if he didn't do that, if he didn't immerse, he didn't sanctify avodaso kshera, so then his avoda is still kosher. And Rashi continues, shacharis, if he doesn't do so in the morning, bein b'yom hakippurim, bein b'chol shana, whether on Yom Kippur or throughout the year, avodaso psula, his avoda is disqualified. Kedi alfinan chuka chuka mi mechusar begadim, as we just said above, we learned that out chuka chuka from mechusar begadim. And the Gemara continues, Amarle Ravasi le Rabbi Yochanan. Ravasi said to Rabbi Yochanan, Michti let us see. Chamesh tevilos v'asar kiddushin deoraisa. The 5 immersions and the 10 kiddushin, the 10 sanctifications, washings of the hands and the feet, those are all deoraisa. They're written in the pasuk. V'chuka ksiv behu, and it says the word chuka. So liakvu, so they should be required. Why are we saying that if the Kohen Gadol skips them, still the avod is kosher? Amar Lei said to him, Amar Kra, the pasuk says, Ulevei Sham, and wear them. The full pasuk, we'll take a look. The pasuk says, Ksones bad kodesh yilbashu michnes evad yu al besaro uviavned bad yachkor uvimitznefes bad yitznov, talking about the various begadim. Bigdei kodesh heim v'rochatz b'mayim es besaro uleveisham. So it says in the pasuk uleveisham, and we understand that to mean levisha ma'akeves. From what's mentioned in this pasuk, the garments, wearing the proper garments, that is ma'akev, that's required. V'yein davar acher ma'akev, but nothing else is ma'akev, nothing else is required. And Rashi explains Doraisa, again, these are all Doraisa, Dechsiv Rachat, says Besor V'mayim Uleveisham, it says he has to wash in water, V'hasam Yolef L'kula Milsa, over there everything's learned out, V'chuka Ksiv Behu, and it's written there, the word Chuka, La'achar Shagamar Kol HaParsha, at the end of the Parsha there, Ksiv, it's written, V'haisalam L'chuka Solam, B'chodesh HaShvi, B'asor, it says Chuka over there. Amar Kro Leveisham, so the Pasuk says Uleveisham, Shino HaKasav B'Levisha Le'akev, the Pasuk repeats when it comes to Levisha, when it comes to wearing the garments, it repeats it in order to say it's required. Chsiv Yilbash Uleveisham, because the pasuk in the beginning again it said Ksonas Bad Kodesh Yilbash, and it says Uleveisham Ulahachi Ksiv Hacha Ikuva, and that's why the requirement is written over here Lemuute Ikuva Dechuka, that comes to exclude the requirement of the word Chuka, the lo Kaima Haikra, that it's not going on this pasuk. The Ayre Berachitzu Levisha, because again this pasuk is talking about washing and talking about wearing. Ella Ashar Devorim Ho Amurim Beparsha, it's going on the other things in the parsha, but in this pasuk the only thing that is ma'akev is the wearing of the garments. As Rashi continues, Ve'ein davar acher b'pasuk zeh ma'akev, nothing else in this pasuk is ma'akev. And the Gemara continues, Tzahavu Panav, his face lit up. When Rav Asi heard this answer from Rabbi Yochanan, his face lit up. Amar Lei, he said to him, Rabbi Yochanan said to Rav Asi, Vav ha'ufta kasvi lach, all I did was write the letter Vav on a piece of wood, meaning the answer I provided is not sufficient, because ihachi, if so, did safranami, the same should be true in the morning. Those should not be required, but those washings are required, and so therefore the answer is problematic. Rashi explains, Tzavu Panav Shal Rav Asi, Rav Asi's face lit up, Mimnei Simcha, because he was happy. Kesavar Tam Hagan Shama, he thought to himself that he heard a good explanation. Vav A'ufta Kesivi Lach, I wrote a Vav on a piece of wood, Kasafti Lach Vav Al Habikas Os She'ein Nikeres Ba. What that basically means is, the letter Vav, you can't even see it on a piece of wood. Mimnei Shuros Habikas Shemafsikos Ba Hafsakas Harbi, there are all these rows on the piece of wood, and therefore it's not even visible. I've done nothing for you. Lashon Acher, another explanation, Hashuros Atzmon Kari Luhu Vavin, Shedomin La, the Shuros themselves, the rows themselves are called Vavs, because they're similar. Kilomar, what it means to say is, Ein Zet Ham, the Ikola Akshuye. This is not a good explanation, because one could ask, Imkain, if so, Afilo Kiddush Shel Shachar Shel Yom HaKippurim Nami Lo Li'akev Ve. The sanctification in the morning of Yom Kippur also should not be required, Imit B'Yom HaKippurim Me Ulevesham, because that should be excluded on Yom Kippur from the word Ulevesham. And the Gemara continues with another answer. Amar Chizkiah says, Amar Krutz, because the pasuk says, V'haisol lehem chak olam lo ulezaru ledorosum. It's going to be a law for them forever, for him and for his descendants for all generations. And we'll take a look at the full pasuk. V'rachatzu yedayim v'ragleim v'lo yamusu. This is talking about the general halacha to wash the hands and feet before doing the avoda. It says they should wash their hands and their feet and they shouldn't die. V'haisalem chak olam lo lezaru ledorosam. And again, it's going to be a law forever. And we understand from this pasuk, davar hama'akev bezaro. If it's something required by his descendants, by his children, meaning by a kohen hedyot, they have a requirement to wash their hands and feet in the morning. Ma'akev bo. So then the kohen gadol on Yom Kippur, that also is going to be required to wash in the morning. Davar she'eno ma'akev bezaro, but something that's not required by his descendants, meaning by a kohen hedyot, like the washings that take place between the various avodas on Yom Kippur, ein ma'akev bo, that's not going to be required for him. And Rashi explains, again, this is by the sanctification this pasuk is written. Bizarro means with his seed, it means as follows. Bekohanim had yotim, it just means with regular kohanim. Dahainu kiddush b'shas knisa, that just refers to the sanctification when they enter to do the avoda. Shenoig b'chol hakohanim, that applies by all kohanim. Ma'akva b'Aaron b'yom HaKippurim, that is ma'akev with Aaron on Yom Kippur, the chuka ksiv, because it's written the word chuka. And the Gemara continues with another answer. Rabbi Yonasan Amar Mehacha. Rabbi Yonasan says from over here, from the following pasuk. This is a pasuk by the kior, by the basin. The pasuk says, "V'rachatzu mimenu Moshe v'Aaron uvanav." It says that they're going to wash from it Moshe and Aaron and his sons. And we understand from that pasuk, davar hama'akev b'bonav ma'akev bo, something that's required by his sons is required by him. Davar sheino ma'akev b'bonav ein ma'akev bo. If it's not required by his sons, then it's not required by him. And so therefore, again, the washings that take place on Yom Kippur between the various avodos, that's not required by Kohen Hedyot, so it's not going to be required by the Kohen Gadol on Yom HaKippurim. And the Gemara says, Rabbi Yonasan, my time alo amar mid Chizkiya. Why doesn't Rabbi Yonasan learn from Chizkiya? Chizkiya's pasuk is very similar. It's saying again, davar hama'akev bezaro is ma'akev bo. And the Gemara says, Amar Lach, because he's going to say to you, Ahu ledoros hu dechsiv. The purpose of that pasuk that Chizkiya brought is really to simply say that this is a law for all generations. It's not trying to make a comparison between Aaron and Uvanav. V'idach, in the other one, my time alo amar mehai. Why doesn't he say from this one? Meaning, why doesn't he say from Rabbi Yonasan's pasuk? And the answer to that is mi boy leilech Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina. He can say that Rabbi Yonasan's pasuk by the kior is really needed for the teaching of Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina. To Yamar Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina, because Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina says kol kior she'ein bo kadei lakadesh arba kohanim imenu. Any kior which is not sufficient, it doesn't have enough water to sanctify 4 kohanim from it, ein mekadshin bo. You can't use that for sanctification. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, v'rachatzu mimenu Moshe v'Aaron uvanav. It says that Moshe, Aaron, and his sons, that's 2 sons, a total of 4 people, they're going to wash from the kior. And Rashi explains, Lidoros hu dechsiv, that's meant for generations. That's what the pasuk of Chizkiya is for. Azhara linhog chukazu lazaru achrav. It's simply a warning that this law applies to his children after him. V'lav lahakesha asa. It would not be for a comparison if that's how you understand the pasuk. And again, in terms of the pasuk by the kior, that might be teaching she'ein bo, she'ein machzik mayim kashir arba kiddushin. If it doesn't have enough water for 4 sanctifications, then it's not good. Moshe v'Aaron, we learned that out from Moshe, Aaron, and his sons train. Uvanav train Moshe, and Aaron is 2, and his sons are 2. Sha'av Moshe Kohen haya b'shivas yimei hamiluim. Rashi notes that Moshe also was considered a Kohen during the 7 days of the miluim. V'yafa gav delokianu bevasa achas. Even though they weren't together being Kohanim, miyukra lohachi midrash. Nevertheless, we darshan the pasuk in this fashion. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Ketzad mitzvahs kiddush. How does the mitzvah of sanctification, of the washing of the hands and the feet, how does that work? Meiniach yado hayemonis al gabe raglo hayemonis. He puts his right hand on his right foot. V'yado hasmolis al gabe raglo hasmolis. He puts his left hand on his left foot. Umekadesh, and that's how he sanctifies. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda says, Meiniach shtei yodav zu al gavzu. He puts his 2 hands one over the other. V'al gabe shtei raglov zu al gavzu, and zu al gabe. And those are on top of his 2 feet, which are one on top of the other. Umekadesh, and he sanctifies in that fashion. Amru lo, they said to him, the Chachamim said to Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Hiflagta, you've went too far. Yevshar lasos kain, that's impossible to do. It's impossible physically to do that. The Gemara says, Shaper Kamrele, they're saying to him correctly, it's impossible to do it. Amar Rav Yosef says, V'chavero Messiah, it means to say that his friend will help him do it. That's what Rabbi Yehuda says, that the Kohen's friend will help him be able to get into this position in order to wash in this manner. And the Gemara continues, My Beinayu, what's the difference between the Tanakam and Rabbi Yehuda? Amar Abaya says, Amida min hatzad, Ika Beinayu, exactly this issue. Amida min hatzad means if he's standing but with the help of someone else, is that considered effective or not? Rabbi Yehuda says it's fine to have assistance. The Tanakama says he has to do it on his own. Amarle Rav Sama Brei de Ravashi Ravina. Rav Sama, the son of Ravashi, said to Ravina, "V'leisav meisav l'kadesh." A solution can be that he can just sit down and be mekadesh. Why does he need someone to help him? According to Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, why not sit down? And to that the Gemara says, Amar Kra, the pasuk says, "L'shares to serve, v'sheirus ma'umadhu," and service has to be standing up. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots. Tanu Rabbanon, the rabbis taught, Kidesh Yoda V'Raglav B'Yom, if he sanctifies his hands and his feet during the day, Ein Tzarech L'Kadesh B'Layla, he does not need to sanctify them again at night if he continues doing the avodah at night. But B'Layla, if he sanctifies them at night, Tzarech L'Kadesh B'Yom, he does need to sanctify them again if he continues to do avodah the next day. Divrei Rebbe, these are the words of Rebbe, this is the opinion of Rebbe. Shaya Rebbe Yomer, because Rebbe would say, Lina Moelas B'Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. Lina is effective by the sanctification of the hands and the feet, and that means Lina, when the day comes, when Amud HaShachar, when the dawn comes, that's called Lina, and that means you need a new sanctification of the hands and the feet because you start fresh at that point in time. Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon says, Ein Lina Moelas B'Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, that Lina is not effective when it comes to the sanctification of the hands and the feet. And the Gemara continues, Tanya Yidach, we have another brisa very similar. Haya Omedu Makriv Al Gabi HaMizbeach, if he's standing and offering on the Mizbeach Kol Halayla all night, Liora, when the light comes, when day comes, Ton Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, he needs to do a new sanctification of his hands and his feet. Divrei Rebbe, these are the words of Rebbe, again, the same as Rebbe above. Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon says, Kevon Shekidesh Yodav Raglav Mitchilas Avoda, since he sanctified his hands and the feet at the beginning of his Avoda, Afilu Mikan V'Ad Asara Yomim, even from now till 10 days, if he continues doing Avoda, Eino Tzarech L'Kadesh, he does not need to sanctify again. And again, that's similar to what Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon said above. And the Gemara says it's tzricha. Now, it's necessary to teach this in both braises. The Yashminan Kamais, if we just had it in the first brisa, so Bahi Ko'amar Rebbe, so there Rebbe would say, De Pasak Le Me Avoda Le Avoda. He's interrupting from one avoda to another avoda, so maybe over there in the new day, by a new avoda, he needs to sanctify. Avol Baha, but in this case, in the second case, the Lo Pasak Le, where there's no interruption, Ema Modi Le Rebbe Le Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon. One might think that Rebbe admits to Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon that you don't need a new sanctification, even over there, anytime it's a new day, Rebbe says you need a new sanctification. And the same in the reverse, V'iyashmin and Baha, if we just had this case, Baha Kamer, Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon, maybe only over here, where there's no interruption, Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon says that you don't need a new one, Aval Baha, but in the other case, where there's an interruption, Ema Modi Leila Rebbe, one might say he admits to Rebbe, so tzricha, that's why it's necessary to teach in both cases. And the Gemara continues, my time with the Rebbe, what's the reason of Rebbe? Why does Rebbe say that you need to have a new sanctification when it's a new day? Dechsiv begishtam, because it says, it's written in the pasuk, when they come close, and therefore the idea is when they come to do a new avoda, a new day, so then they're going to need to sanctify. My time with Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon, and what's the reason of Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon? Dechsiv bevoam, because it says when they enter into the Ol Moed, as long as he hasn't left. So then it's all considered to be all part of the same avoda, so to speak, and no new sanctification is necessary, according to Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon. The Gemara says, V'idach nami haksiv bevoam, but according to Rebbe also, what does he do with the word bevoam? And the answer to that is, iksiv begishtam velo ksiv bevoam. According to Rebbe, if it wrote begishtam, but it didn't say bevoam, hava amina, one might think, al kol gisha v'gisha, on every single ritual that's done, you need to wash again. Kasav rachmana bevoam, that's why it says bevoam. V'idach nami, in the other opinion, Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon, haksiv begishtam, it also says begishtam. Again, he learns from bevoam that you don't need to wash again, but what's the point of writing begishtam? And iksiv bevoam, the answer is, according to Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon, if it just wrote bevoam, velo ksiv begishtam, and didn't also write begishtam, hava amina afilu abia reikonis, one might even think if he enters empty, meaning not to do any avoda. And so one might think that that's why it says begishtam, that the washing specifically is to do an avoda. But the Gemara says abia reikonis, one might think that an empty bia, that if you're just entering the mikdash not to do anything, that you'd have to wash. Haksiv l'sharis, it says to serve, so clearly you have to be doing something. And so again, the question is, why does Rebbe Elazar, according to Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon, why does the pasuk say begishtam? Ela begishtam miboy leila cheder Rav Acha bar Yaakov. Rather, according to Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon, the word begishtam is needed for the teaching of Rav Acha bar Yaakov. The Yamar Rav Acha bar Yaakov, because Rav Acha bar Yaakov says, Hakol modim, everybody agrees, bekiddush sheni, by the second sanctification on Yom Kippur, we'll see Rashi in a moment, but everybody agrees, kishehu lavush mekadesh, that he should do that kiddush, he should do that washing. The Kohen Gadol should wash his hands and his feet when he's wearing garments. There's a machlokas by the kiddush rishon, whether he's wearing his garments at the time that he's washing or not, but by kiddush sheni, everybody agrees. And how do we know that? It's from exactly this pasuk. The Yamar Kra, O begishtam, because the pasuk says, or when they come close to serve, misha eino mechusar elo gisha bilvad. That means the only thing lacking is the actual service, the actual conducting of the ritual. Yatza zeh, that would exclude this Kohen who's not wearing any clothing, shemechusar levisha v'gisha, because he's missing both wearing and then coming close. So that's why it's clear by kiddush sheni, everybody agrees he should be wearing the garments when he is mekadesh. And the Gemara continues and asks, lahaktir isha lamali, what's the purpose of the pasuk saying to burn the fire, to burn the offering? And Rashi explains, Eino tzarech lekadesh balayla, he doesn't need to sanctify at night. Again, even according to Rebbe, if he's already mekadesh during the day and then he continues doing the avoda at night, he doesn't need to sanctify. Im lo yatsa, if he doesn't leave the Beis HaMikdash, velo hisiach daito, and he didn't turn his attention away from doing the avoda, then again, he doesn't need that kiddush balayla. And tzarech lekadesh bayom, but according to Rebbe, he does need to sanctify during the day. Kedem esayim ilse, as he concludes, as Rebbe says, shahalina poseles bekiddush, because lina means, again, you go overnight to the next day, that disqualifies by kiddush. V'yamar hashachar hu ha'osalina. It's dawn that creates the lina. L'kamon beperak hamizbech mekadesh. We're going to see this later on in perak hamizbech mekadesh. Mitchilas avoda. Again, according to Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon, if from the beginning of the avoda, when he began doing these avodos, when he didn't turn his attention away, at asar yamim, even for 10 days, as long as he's standing and serving. And Rashi continues, the Gemara said that if we only had the first brisa, then maybe only over there, Rebbe says, he needs to sanctify again in the morning, the pasuk le min ha'avoda, because over there he stopped doing the avoda, he didn't turn his attention away, but he did stop the actual avoda. Lo Tani Ba, because it doesn't say in the first brisa, Haya Omedu Makriv. It doesn't say that he's continuously bringing the offerings, Kihacha, like it says in the second brisa, and that's why we bring the second brisa to say that even if he's continuously doing the avoda, there's no interruption whatsoever. Still, Rebbe says in the morning, you need to have a new Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. And Rashi continues, Rebbe's source is Dechsiv Begishtam, because it's written Begishtam, Vigisha the Shacharis, and the coming close at Shacharis, Gisha Achrisi, that's like a new coming close, it's like a new avoda. Sharei Yeshkan Ma'arocha Chadasha, there's a new fire. Dechsiv Bevoam, it says Bevoam, that's according to Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, V'harei Lo Yatz, as long as he hasn't left, so then that's all considered the same avoda, so to speak, and therefore he does not need a new Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. Akol Gisha V'Gisha, and then the Gemara said, if it wouldn't have said Bevoam, according to Rebbe, so one might have thought every single ritual, the afilu shtei and bo bayom, even two in the same day, you need to do a new washing. That's why, according to Rebbe, it says bevoam. And then, according to Rebbe Elazar, Rebbe Shimon, why does it say begishtam? Because if it only said bevoam, abia reikonis, one might think even an empty bia, nichnas shelo la'avod, meaning let's say he just entered not to serve. Maybe he needs to do a kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. That's why it says begishtam. But then the Gemara said, no, it can't be that it's teaching us that, because that we already learn from l'shares. And so instead, the Gemara said that according to Rebbe Elazar, Rebbe Shimon, the reason why it says begishtam is to teach us the Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, to teach us the teaching of Rav Acha Bar Yaakov b'Seder Yuma Meseches Yuma. And what was the teaching of Rav Acha Bar Yaakov? He said, Hakol Modim, everybody agrees by Kiddush Sheni that he should be wearing garments, that the Kohen Gadol should be wearing garments when he does the Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. And who is the Hakol Modim, who's admitting? That's Rabbi Meir V'Rabbanan. That's Rabbi Meir and the Rabbanan. They argue in a different context. To pligi b'Kiddush Shalifnei Kol Tvila, Shal Tvilas Kohen Gadol, because they argue by the sanctification before the immersion, they have a machlokas there. Rabbanan Amri Kiddush Yadav V'Raglav Upashat. The Rabbanan say he first does the sanctification, then takes off his clothes. Rabbi Meir Omer Pashat Kiddush Yadav V'Raglav. Rabbi Meir says take off his clothes and then do the sanctification of the hands and the feet. But Modim Heim B'Kiddush Alachar Tefillah, but they admit by the sanctification after the immersion, Shalovesh HaBegadim Shu Machlef, that there he should already be wearing the clothing that he's going to now be putting on, V'Achar Kach Mekadesh, and then he sanctifies. V'Yeino Mekadesh Kishuarm, he shouldn't sanctify when he's naked, Techsiv Begishtam, because it's written Begishtam Yerchatzu, that they wash Begishtam, meaning Misha Eino Mechusar Achar Kiddush Elagish, that the only thing he's missing after the sanctification should be the coming close to do the avoda. And then the Gemara asks, Lahakter Isha Lamali, what's the purpose of that pasuk? Lahakter Isha, says Rashi, Dechsiv Gabe Kiddush, that's written by the Kiddush, by the sanctification. Lamali, what do we need that pasuk for? Pshita de boy Kiddush, obviously that requires the burning of the fires of the offerings, obviously requires sanctification. Ta'gishas Mizbeachi, that's coming close, that's doing a ritual on the Mizbeach, and so therefore, of course, it requires Kiddush, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chaf Amud Aleph.